All right, everyone, thank you for coming out. As the saying goes, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. In this case, that was absolutely the story. Last night in District Heights, we had an officer who was out doing his job who noticed smoke at this building behind us before anyone else did. And without the security of firefighter gear or a hose, he ran into that burning building and saved a number of lives. He was joined by Corporal Rickie Adey, and they're both going to share their stories with you this afternoon. We'll start with Lieutenant Scott Finn. He is a 17-year veteran of the Prince George's Police Department, a highly decorated officer, and he has been named Officer of the Year in the past. Lieutenant Finn.
Yes, good afternoon. Yesterday afternoon, I was on routine patrol in the area when I observed a lot of black smoke. I was on Walker Mill Road at the time. I looked over and I could see smoke coming from the area. I notified our communications supervisor. I asked her if they had any fire calls in the area. She told me at that point they did not. I asked her to initiate one, and I proceeded to the scene. When I got here, the smoke and fire had already spread and was on the second and third floor of the building, and it was coming through the roof in the back of the building. Shortly thereafter, I was joined by Corporal Adey. He and I then went into the building on the back side at first and removed several residents from the building. Some of them apparently were unaware of the fire. A couple had been sleeping, so we were forced to kick the doors in and go in and remove them. We then came around the front side of the building and removed several more individuals from the building. We had an elderly woman who was upstairs sleeping. Another individual was inside with a small child, and being that they were on this side of the building, they were unaware of the fire at that point. Corporal Adey was instrumental in getting the people out from the first floor of the building. There was 5 or 6 individuals in a ground floor apartment who, for one reason or another, did not want to come out when the police were here, and he removed them from the building. We then stood by and assisted fire department when they got on scene, and luckily they got here fast enough to prevent it from spreading any further.
Corporal Adey, do you want to add to the story here? Not really.
Lieutenant, that's fine.
So why don't you tell us what you did?
I assisted Lieutenant Finn. He went upstairs, and I took the downstairs. Like you said, a lot of people didn't want to open their doors, so we did have to force entry to get in there. We had him come out, and just pretty much it, making sure everybody was safe getting out of the building.
Did you have any hesitation at all? I mean, how intense was the smoke and fire when you got to the door?
There was no hesitation. My main concern was getting them out of the building, making sure their safety was okay. The fire was so intense that the metal railings out back were melting. There's dogs out there as well. Lieutenant Finn attempted to try to help the dogs, but the railings were so hot. You could hear the people saying, do something, and he attempted to try to climb up the railing, but wound up burning his hand on the railing because it was just so intense, the heat.
And so what was it that went through your head? There are people inside and I have to get them out, or what was it?
That was it, just get them out, make sure everybody's safe, and try to secure the area as best as we could.
So when you broke, I don't mean to monopolize this, so if anybody else wants to jump in, go ahead. So what, you banged on the door, and what was the response?
A couple of times when I banged on the door, they asked me what I wanted, and I told them their building was on fire, and they asked me what for. And I asked them to stand back from the door, in which they said okay, and I proceeded to kick in the door and told them they needed to exit the building right away.
Was it pretty much because they didn't understand the situation? They thought that something else?
They didn't know there was a fire, or they actually?
Well, I kept screaming that there's a fire in your building. You need to get out. You need to get out. A lot of them didn't want to leave their items. One lady asked me if I could help her grab her TV. But.
Tell me about the lieutenant talked about, and maybe you want to jump in here, but you talked about the elderly woman and who was sleeping and the young child.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit more? And you're going to have to move to the microphone. Talk to us a little bit more about what happened between you and them.
Okay. When we were moving the occupants on the first floor, one of them, as they came out, said, "Did you get the woman from upstairs?" I had gone up and I had banged on the door. There was no answer. I hit the door a lot of times, no answer. So then I went up and I kicked the door, and then the lock broke, but the chain was still on. So as soon as I saw the chain on from the inside, I knew there had to be somebody inside. So I continued to kick it until the chain broke, went into the back bedroom, and she was in the back bedroom asleep. and then I woke her up and told her we had to get her out of the building. She wanted to know what was wrong and why, and I kept telling her it was a fire. So we just helped her down the stairs, and then as we were helping her out, she asked me if we got the guy across the hall. And again, we banged on that door and yelled and screamed, and apparently he didn't want to come out because the police were here because he had some pit bulls. So I told him we weren't worried about that. We kicked that door in and helped him carry the pit bulls downstairs. There was 3 or 4 of them, and we helped them tie them up outside here, then continued on with evacuating the buildings further down until the fire department got here.
A bunch of the residents talked about this animal that was on fire. Can you talk to me about a little bit about what you did to try and rescue that dog and what that must have been like for you?
Yeah, I'm a dog lover myself. I have 2 dogs, and when I got here, I could hear screams of people, but then I heard these blood-curdling screams and yipes and yelps, and I really wasn't sure what it was. As I got out, I could see there was 2 dogs, a puppy and a full-size dog, out on the back balcony, up on the 3rd floor. But by that point, the fire had spread, and the heat was so intense it shattered the glass out from the balcony. The dogs were screaming and yipping and yiping and all. I tried to go up. I grabbed the hold of the one railing on the 1st floor, and the railing was already so hot that it just burned my hands just by touching the railing. So I could only imagine, what the dogs were going through at that point. You can do what you can do. You can only do so much, and there was really nothing either one of us could do at that point. I'll probably never forget the sounds and the noises. Like I said, I'm an animal lover. That was tough. There was another dog. It looked like inside of an apartment because I could hear the glass banging, and I could see it moving, and I was just hoping it wasn't a person, and come to find out it was another dog inside. So all of those dogs burned up inside.
So there were 2 dogs
There were 2 dogs in that balcony. There was a big dog, a pit bull, and there was a puppy out on the balcony with it.
And they both passed, and then there was a 3rd. So then you're saying there was
it looked like there was a
dog?
3rd one inside because it kept hitting the glass and hitting the shade. I could see the blinds and the shades and all moving inside, and you could hear it. And then after a few moments, obviously, it stopped.
Lieutenant, I asked the corporal about this, and I didn't get a chance to ask you. So you arrive, you see this building on fire. You have no protective gear. You have no hose. There's no firefighters here. Any hesitation, or what went through your head?
It sounds kind of cliche, but no, there really wasn't. You just go into almost like an autopilot. You know what you have to do, you know what your limits are and what they're not, and you just assess what you have and you work with what you've got. I knew I couldn't go into those top 2 floors, obviously, the top 2 apartments. I mean, they were already fully engulfed. I knew I could save people who were in the lower units, and from what I saw, people looking out their windows and the blinds moving, I knew for a fact that there were people in those units, and for one reason or another, they just weren't too anxious to come out. So we basically escorted them out of the building after forcing entry. And then once they were out and they saw the magnitude of the situation, they were definitely appreciative. Some wanted to go back in to retrieve items, and that wasn't going to happen. And then we just continued to go systematically, door by door, the ones closest to the fire, and we worked our way out. And as additional units were arriving on scene, we had them start in the other buildings in the units, and just in case, God forbid, it spread. And at that point, the fire department was showing up on scene, and they took over from there and did a great job.
You lost the 3 dogs, but no people were hurt.
Very lucky. No people were hurt. I mean, at that point, I didn't know whether there were or weren't any more people, but I knew that we'd done all we could. Like I said, there's no possible way in this world that I could have gotten into that top apartment. It was just, the flames were so intense at that point that I couldn't make it between the building and the steel railing anymore, and having to shield my arm and shield my face. That's how intense it was, and the railings and the steel steps then started to melt at that point, and then I just had to move out, and then the fire department came in and took over from there, and we just assisted them how we could.
I'm sorry, so you tried to did you access the top apartment from inside or no?
From inside.
But you couldn't access it from outside?
No, I went as high as I could inside the building. You could only go so high due to the heat and the smoke. So then we concentrated on the ones below it. The most of the damage is on the back of the building.
Okay, I'll ask you afterwards. I'm still a little confused.
Neither one of you are volunteers anywhere, right?
No, sir.
And have either of you been involved in this kind of a situation before, or you've been this close to a fire?
Automotive fires, car crashes, yes. The helicopter crash that we had involving Trooper 2, yes, but never on a building or a structure myself.
Did anybody come up to you afterwards and say anything to you? And what was that like?
No, but in all honesty, I was inside the perimeter at that point, and for safety reasons, we had them all moved out, so they were all out in the street. It wasn't for lack of appreciation, I'm sure, but it was just logistics. They had no access at that point.